Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits and I am ready to warp my loom again to try out my third project. I know I said that I wasn't going to film every single weaving project, but I figured since I keep making mistakes and learning from them, I'll keep filming it at least, and maybe, who knows, maybe I'll combine this with a few other projects. But I want to use this yarn from Knitcrate. I have 200 grams of this DK weight alpaca merino blend. This is the colorway Electric Abalone from Audine Wool's Halo DK, which is 50% alpaca, 30% merino wool, 20% nylon. And unlike the worsted weight yarn that I did, this DK weight yarn has 236 yards per 100 grams, which means that if I am warping the loom with, say, even if I tried 3 yards or if I do 2.5 yards again, if I do that amount, I should have a wider scarf because there's more yardage. And so I did have some extra once I ran out of space on the loom. So I think that I want to warp it for sure with 100 grams and then maybe a little bit of the second one. I think that makes sense to do because I definitely wove as far as I could, but I am going to try to set up the loom correctly this time, and so therefore I don't have to re-tie things off, so I won't lose some length doing it that way. When Knitcrate does tonal yarn, you can usually see how it was dyed. They usually do 2 different colors or like hues of the yarn in slightly alternate ways. And I think I took a picture. You can see how this one was dyed, but unlike some others, the color sections are a little bit less precise, which I like. That makes it a little bit more random, a little bit less pooling. It may still pool, but it didn't bother me with the last scarf that was a pooling, repeating colorway because, I don't know, there was just like a randomness to using it for both the warp and weft. So we're going to try that again, plain weave, same yarn, warp and weft. And I hope I really like it. All caked up and ready to start warping. The colorway, I think in person feels a bit more periwinkle than maybe it does right here, but I am excited with the softness of this tonal dyed yarn and to see how it'll work. Hopefully it's not too sticky. This might not be the best yarn for weaving, but if it's not, then well, that's another lesson I'm about to learn. I'm getting ready to warp my loom again, and I've gone through my 2 previous videos. Rebecca, this is the right way, although maybe wind it back on the beam a little bit so you have a little more space. And this is the wrong way. Right, wrong, right, wrong. Okay, I think I'm set up correctly. I have tied on to the apron bar, which is already going over the back beam. So that was a mistake from the first time. And I'm confident that the loom is set up in the correct direction because this is where the extra warp will go, and then that will be my weaving area. So let's do this. Warping is pretty sweaty work. There's a lot of moving back and forth. I am doing a little over a 3-yard warp. I think a tiny bit longer than what I did for my very first scarf. I'm planning to warp a bit over 100 grams of yarn. So I'm going to use all of the first cake and then a bit of the second. And so hopefully this will work out well for me. The only other thing that I really want to note from this process is that I realized I spent a lot of time unwinding the yarn from the cake to make it a little bit easier for me to pull the warp through and onto my warping board. And so I think that for the skein that is primarily going to be the warp, next time it would be way, way easier and make so much more sense for me to warp directly from the yarn on a swift. Just because I think that would be way easier and remove like one step that is kind of keeping me from getting a rhythm. I filmed a bit of a time lapse of the warping up to this point, and I feel like this could be similar to where I was on my first scarf. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 33 slots right now. And I think I was only at 30 for the scarf that now belongs to Ryder. This is good. This is great because I wanted something that was a little wider, which is why I was going for DK weight yarn in the first place. Excuse the brown paper. I figure we may use that to help start things off, so I saved it from some package I got. But yeah, I think that I need to figure out how many more I want to warp from the second ball of yarn. Apparently the yardage that you use for the weft is about 2/3 of the yardage used for the warp. So I can make this a little bit wider. I don't want to do 10 more slots because then I might really not end up with enough weft for what I want to do, but maybe I'll do an extra like 6 or so to give us another like inch of width, almost inch. It may give us a little more of an inch, but I think I'll go through 3 slots on one side and 3 slots on the other. And the nice thing is that I shouldn't end up with like excess. Actually, it'll probably give me a little more than an inch because 6 more slots is actually 12 strands, and this is an 8 dent heddle, which means that there are 8 strands per inch, I think is how that works, right? But so I think I'll do 3 more slots on one side and then 3 slots on the other. There we go, all warped, looking wider. This is great. Length, it's not that much longer. I think I warped 3 yards for the first scarf and then redid it, so it was shorter, but we've definitely got a good 3 yards of warp here. So now I just have to go and get it tied onto the other beam. I think things are in the right direction. Now I'm going to start winding it onto the beam. Okay, let's check. Up. How's the tension? It's okay. And down. Down isn't quite as good, but I think once we start getting, you know, things separated, we should be in good shape. The concern I have is because this yarn has like a bit of a halo and it's a little bit grippy, I'm a little concerned with being able to weave easily, but I mean, that looks pretty good. So yeah, let's get started. I used paper towel this time, and you can see that it worked pretty well for getting things like evenly spaced so we can go. I'm a little bit worried about the bulk that I have on the, I don't know if this is now the front beam. I don't really know. I'm a little bit worried about the bulk. I don't know. I probably could have like tied off smaller, shorter sections. I feel like I have a lot of waste, but we're going to go for it. Now, the one thing I kind of want to try is hem stitching. I've never done that before. I mean, this is only my 3rd weaving project on a rigid heddle loom ever. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how well that'll work, but I think, well, I think I'm going to try it. This is the first few inches. I didn't work on it very long and it's going well. I love the little like plaid effect that we get from the variegated yarn. That is just so pretty. The thing that still feels weird to me is like whenever I knit, I don't like to have like space, you know, but I know that the yarn will relax and hopefully fill out a little bit. And so we're going to go with it and just see. And if it's an airy, flexible scarf, I remember feeling like my last scarf was a little dense. And so that's why we're trying DK, but so far so good. And now I want to try to hem stitch. And so I was watching a video and I left like a good length, like I think 3 widths, at least 3 widths of the scarf of my weft yarn. And I'm going to count, I guess, the number of warp threads. There are 78 warp threads, which means that it is divisible by 3. And so I think I will do the Kelly Casanova under 3 warp threads up 2. and around, and we'll give that a shot. I don't think I'm going to try to film it, but I'll check back in shortly. So far, so good. You can't really see, but the thing to remember is that you are essentially knotting each time. And so that helped me a lot. I mean, it's not going to be the most even, but if Rebecca, when you're finishing, is curious, you're doing 3 warp threads up 2 and over. And this is the video. So under 3 weft, under 3 warp, up 2 weft, under those 3, and we're knotting it. Under 3, up 2, under 3, and we are going through, so it's like a little knot, which I am doing this mainly so I remember how I did it, because I imagine that the important thing, or that a important thing, is that you want to hem stitch the same way on both sides. But what I'm really excited about, and maybe I'll braid these at the end, but I'm very excited that it means that the edge of the fabric isn't going to be like moving around, and I'll be less stressed about the fringe. So yeah, I can see how this really does secure things. That's really cool. So the last one I didn't really know what to do. I sort of just did my best to fiddle it, but I mean, this looks good. This looks so clean. I'm impressed. I still have no idea how it doesn't like slip down the warp, but I like this a lot. It's so much less bulky, and I have plenty of yarn left. So things are going well. It's going so fast. I think even though it's only been a couple months since I wove the last scarf, I'm amazed with how fast it's going. The yarn is like fuzzy and grippy, but that has not posed any trouble at all with the weaving. If anything, it means that it like helps. It's like not too slick. It's not slipping around. So it's working great. Is there anything you wanted to say?
Thank you for watching.
What, do you think I'm filming for ChemKnits?
Yes.
Okay, gentle. What do you think is cool about this?
Well, I like how this bow is crisscross.
Mm-hmm.
But the part that you didn't make crisscross can be bent down. This part, it just bends like that. Not as quick as this.
Yep. All right. I'm going to get back to it.
Oh, and this is a bit bumpy and this isn't.
Mm-hmm. Are you just watching me weave? Since I filmed a few other time lapses for this vlog, I figured I may as well have one of the actual weaving too. I have no idea if any will use any of this content. But you know, you can see where I get start to get a little rhythm going. It's not super smooth because, I mean, this is only my 3rd weaving project, but I feel like it's getting easier and easier for me to have like a more fluid rhythm going on. Weaving is going pretty well. I do have some drawn at the edges. My sleevages, I think that's what it's called, are not great. Not by a long shot. That's something I need to work on. But I know some drawn is inevitable, and it's not a ton. And so I think that that is good. Like if we look at on the heddle, like that's not bad. So I think I'm pretty happy with the width. I'm curious how things will bloom and how much width I'll lose when I wet finish it. So I really should try to remember to measure it beforehand. But yeah, and I'm also curious how close to the end I'll be able to get. I mean, I've got a lot of fabric here on this beam right now, and there's still, I guess, some more warp, not like a ton, but this is the rest of the yarn that I have. I wound onto both sides of the shuttle. It didn't really occur to me that I could do that. I thought that that would just be if you were using 2 strands at a time. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit wider, so it means that I have to advance a little sooner, but it means that I'm not going to have another break in the yarn, because once I run out, I'm out of yarn. And a certain puppy, hey Indy, is hanging out with me while I weave and watch Olympics. And yes, the kids have put, I think, well, most pillows and blankets on the floor. They were doing something earlier. But back to it. I don't know. I feel like I don't have that much weft left, but I still have a fair amount of warp. And so I'm getting a little nervous that I made the warp way too long. I mean, I still should have a reasonable like ratio, I would think, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do I have too much? Like, am I going to regret that? Or am I going to have like yarn chicken and have some left over? My goal is to have none left over. And so I guess that means, I don't know. I guess I just will have to get better at calculating, because like on one hand, I'd rather have, I don't know which I'd rather have left over. I don't know. Because I mean, it is annoying to wind the yarn back off the shuttle. So I don't know. But what I do have to remember is that as I am like advancing the fabric, I am unwinding more from the back beam than I'm winding onto the front beam. So it doesn't necessarily feel like I'm making like a ton of progress, but I think that like in my head, based on how much I'm weaving onto the front beam, but I think that, I don't know, we'll find out. And just like that, I have run out of weft. I saved about 3 lengths to do hem stitching on this end. The good news is that I still have more weavable space, but we are just about to the end of the warp. So I probably would have been able to get, I don't know, at least another 6 inches or more. So I don't know yet until we unwind the fabric from this beam how much scarf we ended up with. Therefore, I don't know if I messed up the calculation, because I feel like I did approximately the right amount. But yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I should have made the warp a little bit shorter, maybe. Certainly, I didn't weigh the second skein before I decided to add some more warp on either side. And so maybe I did that a little bit, but I'm happy with the width. So I should have a good length scarf. I really think I do. I just don't, I mean, I won't know until I undo it. So I'm going to go hem stitch and then we'll open it up. The start and end are a little bit awkward, but I think that it looks really, really neat. And I'm excited that like things aren't going to slip around. That's something that I've definitely struggled with in my other projects. Yeah. And again, I've been filming time lapses. I don't know how much I'm going to include, but I'm excited. It is the moment of truth. And now, oh man. Unwrap it. I mean, so far, so good. Wow. I'm certainly out of camera. But lengthwise, let me see. This is straighter than my last one where I had tension issues. Ooh, and it's already like really drapey. It's not as thick as the other scarf was. So that is cool. I need to get a measuring tape. Plus I need to scooch over so I can see. Okay, so here, how long is this measuring tape? Okay, so that is about 51 inches. And then the bottom side starts here. So 51 inches plus 42 inches. Okay, that's 93 inches, which is over 7.5 feet. So the scarf should be taller than me, which I think is good. I think that, man, I guess I could have made the warp a little bit shorter and made the scarf a little bit longer. But let's take a look at the width, because I haven't actually like measured that yet. Okay, so it is, before wet finishing, I would say about 9¼ inches wide, compared to, and I'm measuring where the heddle is, compared to about 9¾ inches where the warp threads on the heddle. Lost about ½ inch of width during the weaving process. Okay, I'm curious to see if I notice any mistakes, but I'm gonna go ahead and untie this. I don't actually know, is the bottom the wrong side or the right side? Ooh, the hem stitching looks really, really cool on the reverse side. And I'm trying to see, so therefore like I'm in the shadow way, but I haven't found any big floats yet, have I? Oh my gosh. Did I really not make any huge mistakes this time? Wow. I mean, maybe I'll find one later, but okay, this is pretty cool. Okay, I'm about to remove the yarn from the beam. I'm gonna cut it off. But what I did consider, like, oh, should I try to weave like a bookmark or something on this side? But I wondered if fringes on the sides would be awkward. I don't know. I suppose that like in the future, I could have more thought and planning in mind. So that way, if I have a lot of extra warp, maybe I could do some like coasters or something. Maybe that's a good idea, but that's something that's worth like thinking about in the just in case scenario. But let me go ahead and cut this off. So I haven't like officially wrapped it around myself yet, but 9 inches is a really good width. But the length, okay, so the bottom goes like mid shin, the bottom of the weaving. Certainly I'm gonna do something with the fringe. I don't know if I'll braid it or just leave it loose. I think it depends. I'll decide. I don't know if I'm supposed to do that before or after wet finishing. But the length is good. Maybe a little long, but that's not a problem. It's definitely still a little bit stiff. It needs that wet finishing, but can I get far enough away? Yeah, the length of it, just like even really loosely wrapped around my neck, is good. It is a good adult length, which is great because the other one was like a little bit short, a little bit thin. This we've already got some drape and I haven't even wet finished it yet. So, I mean, that's good, right? As for the fringe, okay, I looked and people recommended doing the fringe before wet finishing. I think I want to braid it. It's going to take forever, but I think I like the look of this. And what I don't know is there's all these people that do like these really, really cool twists, but my bundles are of 3. And I think that to do the twists small, it should have been an even number. And also I'd have to order one of those hair twister things that people like to do a twisted fringe. So maybe in my next one, I'll hem stitch into bundles of 4. So that way I can do that. But I think what I'm going to do is braid. I don't know how long. I'll braid it and then tie a knot at the end and then we'll wet finish it. Because otherwise I do think that this is just going to become a mess. I am going to cut the fringe before I braid it. And I'm cutting it at about 9 inches, I think, approximately, maybe a little bit less. I don't know if that's how long I will want it to be. But using the rotary cutter, like, this is such an easier way to get even fringe, even if things are like a tad bit off, like that's just so much more even than eyeballing it. And at least on this side, there's not that much waste. Yeah, so things I love include hem stitching is a new favorite, and using the rotary cutter. So I'm gonna put this at about the same place I did last time. And I'm gonna braid it after. I have a feeling I am going to regret deciding to braid the fringe because I think that's going to take forever. But, I mean, cutting it this way works great. And again, I felt like I had so much warp left over. And I was like, man, I mean, did I cut more off already? I don't think so. Maybe just like an inch. Like this is not that much waste. Sure, I could have woven further and had more fabric, but this actually maybe worked better than I thought. And then as far as the fringe goes, ooh, I don't want to start with that one because that one's an edge and I'll need to figure out what I'm going to do. But I guess it doesn't have to be like the tightest braid, but this yarn is so fuzzy that I thought a braid would be nice. And I think one tip is to put a book down on the scarf itself. So that way, because I have something to pull against versus right now, I'm going very, very loose. But the other good news, and I will likely need to shorten things again. I mean, I don't know how long I really want it to be. Like maybe this long. So I'll keep that like extra loose. I think that just like a nice loose braid will, and obviously then this will be trimmed. If I can do it pretty evenly, that I think it'll look really, really nice because this is a lot. And if the fringe like didn't clump to itself, then maybe it would feel nice to just have that loose. I think that these little braids will be time consuming, but cute. I mean, should I be trying to do a tighter braid? I think at one point I did like a tiny test and did it tighter, but I think the loose one looks fine, especially with the like size of the bundle groups. But I guess the other thing I should note is about how long is the braid. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5.5 inches. So that should be something for me to compare it to. And then hopefully, I mean, I can either trim with the mat again or trim with scissors. I bet the braiding may take longer than the actual weaving because the weaving didn't take very long. So while I was cutting the fringe, I was like, oh, this doesn't seem like it's that bad. I only snipped a couple inches. I'm curious. Okay, I mean, it looks like 10 to 12 grams of yarn, which is about 5% of the total amount of yarn I was using for this project. So not that bad, but still, it's a lot. It's a lot of yarn, potentially a lot of yardage. Enough to be used for something else. And so, man, I don't know, like weaving is faster. There is more waste, but if you have remnant yarn that wasn't used in a project left over that is sort of sitting and hibernating, is that yarn waste? Not necessarily, because you could use it for something else, but do you? So I don't know. I guess this is one downside to weaving. I'm just glad that I think I made as much fabric as I really could have with this yarn. And so that is a positive. It is months later, and I am finally starting to braid the fringe. I'm sitting here at my counter so that way I can sort of brace myself here, and I'm gonna braid it so then I can wet finish it. Then I'll adjust, I guess, any knots that I need to. Maybe I'll adjust the knots before I wet finish, but I don't know how the braids will hold up. But the nice thing is that the braids aren't really sticking to one another the way that the fringe is a little grippy, so that's good. But especially since I got one of those like twisting things that you can use for hair, and if I had grouped these by 4, then I could have used that to twist to finish off. That would be a little bit faster. So I think the braids are going to look awesome. I regret it a little bit, but I want to be able to finally finish off this vlog and start on another weaving project. So hopefully I'll finish this up today and then wet finish. one side is done. That wasn't so bad. And actually, it looks super, super cute. I'm just gonna try twisted next time because I think that that might be a little faster, maybe? But we do know I loved the way the hem stitching came out, and so that's really, really great. But anyway, now I just have to do the other side. I love that the white balance is never good for this scarf, which looks bright blue, even though it really is more periwinkle. But anyway, I absolutely adore the braided fringe, and it didn't take as long as I thought it would, and so I'm not sure what it was in me that really was putting it off for a long time. The one thing I'm noticing is I was very consistent with the size of the tie-off, except for like that section right there. I may redo those. Okay, I'll redo those and then we'll wet set. Wet set, wet finish. Wet finish, right? I'm not trying to full or felt the fabric at all. Goodness, I don't even remember the fiber content. Thankfully, I know I talked about that earlier in the vlog. I do believe it was non-superwash. But I am using a warm water in here to sort of help the fibers sort of bloom, open up a little bit. And then I'm going to let it cool here in the water until the water gets to room temperature, which really won't take very long. I probably wanted to give it a good soak for at least 30 minutes anyway. And so I think in that time it'll cool off. But this is going to help. And honestly, the time that it's had has probably helped as well. But because there was so much tension on the fibers, getting it wet is going to sort of allow that to relax and will allow the weave to sort of settle into place. And so it will shrink a little bit and hopefully close up a little bit of the holes. But overall, I'm really happy with the way that this fabric turned out. So anyway, I'm not going to be agitating it or anything, but in, half an hour or so, or when it feels cool, then I'm going to go ahead and gently blot it in between a couple of towels, just to remove a lot of the liquid. I don't want to put it through my spin dryer because I don't want anything to like get pulled or twisted or I don't know, have anything strange happen with the weave. And then I am going to sort of nicely hang it to dry. And then, well, we'll see what it looks like in the end. Here is my finished scarf. And I'm just noticing like a cool shape from some of the pooling that I hadn't seen before. But oh my gosh, I love this. The braided fringe is not a choice I would make again, but it was honestly, I think, the right choice for this scarf. Who knows, I may feel differently once I try out my first twisted edge, but the yarn, which is kind of grippy to itself, now has a fringe that hangs well. The raw yarn just wasn't the right look for this particular scarf. It could have worked for a number of other scarves, just not this one. The fabric has a really lovely drape to it. It could have had maybe a tighter weave. For all like the stitches have relaxed and stuff in here, you can still see between them a little bit. I'm not sure how much it shrunk. It looks like now we're just shy of 9 inches wide. The scarf is way taller than me. If I just have it like this, the fringe ends probably at about mid shin, which is probably a good scarf length for an adult because open, it's not dragging on the floor. This one's probably a bit too long for one of my kids to steal from me, but they might still try to take it. It's more than long enough to just be worn like this, which is probably the most common way I wear a scarf. Now, I mean, I didn't do it evenly, but there's enough length here to tuck the scarf into a coat and keep your neck nice and warm, which honestly is what you want from a scarf. I think that it is so funny that I was so nervous that it wouldn't be long enough, that I didn't have enough warp. We did have extra yarn and there was some waste from the warp, but I guess I need to figure out what to do or how to store warp waste in the future, because when you have a lot of threads that are like this long, it's a little bit too short to use for some random weaving, and maybe a little bit too long, although they could be cut, to try to put through a drum carder into some fiber for spinning, but maybe not. So I did not save a lot of those ends that I cut off of the fringe this time, but I think going forward I might do that and find like a good box to store these short pieces, because who knows, maybe I can blend it and create some kind of really unique yarn in the future, and that would be really cool. But anyway, I am so happy with how this turned out. Originally, I thought the yarn was nice, but wasn't like the most exciting colorway I'd ever seen, which is one reason why I picked it to try out with weaving. And I absolutely love how it looks woven up. And so I have a lot of other yarn in my collection that both are things that I dyed and things from, say, Knitcrate or elsewhere that I'm excited to try to weave. I'm really enjoying this medium, and hopefully I won't take such a big break to finish off my fringe like I did this time. I'm very excited and have a little too many ideas for my next project, so I can't wait to see where those go. Please make sure you're subscribed to the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. I post at least twice a week, and I'm trying to bring in some more vlogs of my own crafting adventures outside of my dyeing, which you can count the yarn dyeing as crafting as well. But that way you can see more about what I like to use yarn for and make out of yarn. And honestly, vlogs like this, but really as a blog instead of a vlog, was kind of how all this started in the first place, so it's fun to just go back to my roots. And plus, it not only allows me to document the progress, I find these to be a handy resource for myself when I want to go and make sure I don't warp things backwards. Yeah. But I also just enjoy sharing like the progress as I'm working on something, and so I have a lot of fun with that. And I have some more like knitting vlogs that are actually in progress, and so who knows when that'll be done, but it is in progress and something I plan to share hopefully sometime soon. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for watching.